Hey, what's up, guys? So, I spoke about our debt situation in Kenya some time back, and as someone who speaks so much about investing in government securities, basically debt securities, and government, treasuries, I have to be honest and say sometimes you have to be careful, right? As much as I support investing in bonds, in treasury bills, in other debt securities as well, but mainly government securities, I have to be honest as well when I come here and tell you when things are seemingly not very okay. And so, are we getting out of control? Is everything getting out of control right now? Because I did a video at some point and we went through lots of technical details around debt. And because at some point people were quite worried about the idea that we could actually default on our debt and what comes with that default, what are the consequences of actually defaulting? Because when we say the government is defaulting on debt, what do we mean? We mean that the government, just like any other person, is not in a position to pay its debt that is owed to other people, institutions, banks, countries as such. So for context, the issue has been that the government has had this ballooning debt situation in Kenya. It just didn't start with William Ruto as the president. They started with Kibaki, went into Uhuru Kenyatta's reign, and went into Ruto's reign. And of course, this has just been going on and on and on. And politics is just politics, right? But for those of us who are innocently investing, right, we need to be careful with such things. We need to know when things are getting out of hand, and we need to know how to deal with them. As someone who is investing, someone who tells people to invest in government securities, and someone who's very pro bonds and bills, I have to be honest and come here and tell you, hey, and even money market funds, by the way, because then where the money market funds that you get are invested is just these same debt securities, apart from maybe private ones or whatever. But it will still affect them because whichever way you look at it, most of these institutions, most of these money market funds, most of these investment firms, they invest in these government securities. And so it's almost similar when we talk about government securities and you're thinking, oh, it might only affect someone who has invested in bonds and treasury bills. But when a government defaults, or if a government defaults, it affects everyone. As someone talks about money, I make sure that I cover all bases, right? So the Kenya's debt situation has just been getting worse. In the last 7 months alone, I think President William Ruto has borrowed 440 billion Kenya shillings. Now that is some serious money. Now that has definitely pushed our debt levels to a new all-time high. We're talking about 11 trillion in debt that we're actually paying right now. And when you're paying debt, of course, you're paying it with high interest, right? So the government is paying loads of debt with high interest. So there are two levels to it. And the fact that Ruto has just continued borrowing consistently over a long period of time is still poses danger in many ways, right? It poses danger to you as an individual. The fact that you will actually notice that people don't have a lot of liquidity right now. People don't have money in their pockets. There's no money in the economy as it should, right? And of course, there's also the impact of like if you're investing in some of these companies and even debt securities in Kenya. And how can an investor, a savvy investor who listens to Ken's Money Matters, prepare for these eventualities, which are some of the risks we take in? I always say there are risks with any investment, and with government bonds are some of the safest investments, or government securities are some of the safest investments you can ever make. But even those safe investments come with a certain level of risk that you must be willing to accept as an investor. So we are at 11 trillion as we speak as our debt level. We are paying very high interest rates, obviously. Now the domestic debt is 5.9 trillion out of that. So almost half, but just a little bit over half. It means the biggest part of this debt is actually domestic debt. So you have your domestic debt, then you have your foreign debt running to around 5 point something trillion as well. And that brings it to around 11 trillion as outstanding debt right now. Now the one main indicator that tells you where the country is going to is what we call the GDP to debt ratio, right? What's that? It means you're looking at the output of the country, what the country is producing, the gross domestic product, and what the country is paying as debt. Because you can only use what you make to pay your debt. You can only use your income to pay your debt, right? Because there's no other way. You have to make money for you to pay your debt. And how does the country calculate how they make money? It's through GDP. So through our GDP, we know exactly how much we're producing and percentage of what we are producing to what we owe as debt. At the moment, we stand at 70.1%, which is a new high for the country. Not really a new high. I think the highest we've gone was 78 at some point when we were really at risk. And please watch that video because that video went into like details of the technical details, I compared everything. I compared Kenya to Ghana when Ghana actually defaulted on its debt. I explained what happens when there's a debt default to those who have invested. I explained the conditions that can lead to that, and I explained some of these other technical stuff that could may help you gauge where we are, when it comes to debt. But of course, today I'm just looking at the idea of, are you supposed to be worried and what should you be doing? And looking at where we are at the moment with this debt situation, are you supposed to be still investing in bonds and treasury bills? Because then I know a lot of people who have put their life savings, their retirement money, they have layered in bonds, their usual income, their living income into bonds and government securities, So it would be sad to be in a situation whereby you're not sure, but this is your daily bread, this is your income, this is your retirement, this is your life saving. So we need to be aware, we need to know exactly what to expect. So like I've mentioned, the technical details here is we are at 11 trillion right now. That's what the number we're hitting with our debt. We are paying high interest rates. Our GDP to debt ratio is at 70.1%, which is extremely high. Recently, it went back a little bit, but then, with the latest borrowing in the last 7 months of 440 billion, we are talking about high numbers again in terms of our output to what we're paying towards debt. And that's putting us at a very risky place. Now, what should you do as an investor? The main thing you need to do right now is try not to invest in very long-term debt securities. Don't commit for too long, right? Because you want to see how things are going to pan out. Don't commit for too long. That's one thing. This is the time to utilize things like money market funds for medium term. This is the time to utilize things like treasury bills that does 30, 90, and 182 days. This is the time to use like the 5-year bonds so that you can see what's going to happen in the next few years, because there was the IMF program, which has again been cancelled now, and they're saying Kenya needs a new program because of the cash crunch that we are facing. And so we need to be prepared for that. And this is the time for you to not go so long. Don't go in so deep. That's one. Don't tie your money for too long, not knowing what's going to happen. If you're in a position and you're starting to invest now, or you have some money that you want to put now, be careful how you distribute it. Second thing is, right now you want to rebalance your portfolio. I always advise, of course, on how to distribute your portfolio. You should be well diversified enough, but this is a time to rebalance it in a way that you're thinking, okay, there's a lot of risk here in the bonds area or in the debt securities area, and you want to reduce that risk and put that risk somewhere else. I know that the stocks have been even messier, obviously, and international stocks have been so bad, but international stocks are going through a normal cycle whereby at some point they're going to rebound and they're going to take in that price shock and get back to their all-time high. The systems in the West are way more structured, and they ensure that they protect, how things operate despite the person who is in charge. Remember, much right now we have someone who is, a bit crazy in charge, but then we have to be aware that the systems do protect people, they protect the institutions. Everything that happens has been institutionalized quite well, and therefore you just don't make certain decisions. So however much the market has been crazy, the market will stabilize at some point. Now, if you're going to rebalance your portfolio, this is the time to think about stocks, not only internationally, but also locally. There are also funds locally that invest internationally. This is the time to think about them as part of the diversification plan and rebalancing your portfolio so that you're not heavily into debt securities. That thing is the time not to go back in big. What do I mean? I'm sure there are people whose bonds are maturing right now, or whose treasury bills are maturing right now. I'm not so worried about treasury bills, but bonds. If you had long-term bonds and they're maturing right now, this is the time to keep some money, keep some money back as you go back into a new bond. Look for bond that's a bit of shorter term, but also don't just go back fully in. This is a time to protect some of your principal and distribute it in other investments that you can easily access. So again, you want to make sure that you don't go fully in with your principal amount. I know some people just layer these bonds, they get their principal amount back, they plow it back into the market again. Maybe this is the time to take a bit of a break. Sometimes it's good to even have some liquidity at some point and monitor how things are going. So rebalancing of your portfolio is going to be critical at this time. Now, this is also the time to use accessible investments accounts. This is a time you want to go into accounts that you can easily access in case you see things are going a certain way. It's the time to make sure that you can access your money. It's not the time to lock your money for a very long time in places that you can't access it. So this is the time to use accessible accounts. I always say that these are things you should always have anyways in your portfolio, but it's now at that critical time whereby you have to think about it. And of course, I don't want you to be too worried about these things. I'm just preparing you as an investor. You need to be ready that anything can happen, and we take this risk all the time. And we just don't know what politics is going to be like, because all these things are politically leaned. And now with everything happening and the debt situation getting worse, and we're talking about a spiraling situation here, we do not know exactly what to expect, because we are not in control of the economy, and the people in control don't seem to know too much about it anyways. So this is a time that you need to be a bit more reserved with your investment. This is a time you need to be a bit more selfish with your investment. Don't go fully in, don't go crazy. I always support bonds, treasury bills, but you know what I'm saying? Hey, chill, relax a bit. I'm heavily invested in bonds myself. I have long-term bonds, and therefore I have no other option. I'm gonna stay in because that's how I invest. I take in the risk, but you also need to learn how to take in those risks. You need to learn how to deal with the news. Now, the other point is, this is not the time to read news, because I have a lot of people reaching out to me asking me, hey, Ken, what's happening? Oh, Ken, have you seen the headlines? Oh, Ken, have you seen what's happening with the debt situation? What could happen with the default and stuff like that? It's also the time not to read all this news. It's the time to just know that, hey, you have invested already. You don't have, so much you can do at the moment unless you sell your bond for a loss in the secondary market. So this is just the time to chill and say that I've invested my money. There are risks I took when I was investing that money, and I'm willing to ride through it. So I believe that things are going to be okay. I believe 100%. But as an investor, you need to be aware of things to do or not to do at this particular time, right? And please don't rush selling your bonds in the secondary market right now, because when you rush selling your bonds in the secondary market, chances are you're going to lose money in that process, because people are willing to offer you some crazy, amounts that are not really equivalent to what you actually bought them for. You won't get any premium deals right now. So don't rush trying to sell as soon as possible, because you'll be desperate, you'll just not get a good deal, and you end up losing money, and probably you don't even default, right? I'm just sounding a warning here to people who have invested that, hey, we have this thing happening on the side, so just be aware as an investor that when you're going into the market, you get into the market aware of this risk. I always give these warnings when you're investing in stocks in Kenya, in stocks internationally, in crypto, in forex, when you're investing in commodities, when you're investing in debt securities. So I give this warning all the time. So this is not anything different. And I want to be fair enough to also sound a warning when I know that, the debt situation in the country is getting to a point whereby we're like, what's happening? So we've seen politicians fall out with the administration, then they come out and tell us how dire the situation is. And it's sad that we only get to know about these deep details that we should actually be aware of when someone falls out with the administration, which you can't even now verify if that information is true. But dealing with what information is in the public domain, I have told you exactly what to expect. I've told you that this is a developing situation, and we're going to see how the president navigates this situation in the coming months, and that will give us more confidence in what to expect. But for now, as an investor, relax if you are invested, but if you're not yet, chill a bit, right? Don't get in with your 2 feet. Just take it easy, monitor the environment, and see how things are going to happen. I hope that's helpful. Until next time, I'm out.